Thank you, Sheetal, and thank you, Hannah, and Claudia, and Nadine, and FiveMyles. It's really great and an honor to be in front of this. If you look around this room, and the most important resource in the room is the people in this room. There are some amazing artists in this room, and judging by the artists I know in this room who are amazing artists, the other artists are also amazing artists. So, the proposal writing and public art. So the last third is going to be about public art in specific. One of the reasons I did this is because people have started asking me to talk about how to apply for things. I'm a Creative Capital recipient. They do a lot of work to develop artists and how we do what we do. And I did a resource with them, which was it's still online. It's a video for last year, but it still applies for this year about how to apply for Creative Capital. And I realized there were some things that I said, but I didn't, in the context of having 4 people with me, I didn't actually have image to go with that. And also, like I said, well, be clear about blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what does that actually mean in someone's head? Are they having a picture that goes with that? And so this is really, a lot of these screens, some of these screens are going to be like from my computer and how I do things. And I don't think I've ever been to an artist talk where they just show you how they prepare to propose. And it may be helpful or useful to you, and this is the first time I'm doing this, so hey, welcome. So this is the lineup we're gonna have: getting organized, content, and then on public space.
Can we take photos of your slide?
Oh, sure. It's going to be on the web later, but if there's stuff that I don't know when it will be on the web later, it has to be processed. So any of this that you find useful now, and this is also kind of a bit of bearing my soul. I am showing you my thing. It's weird, but we're going to get through it, and everybody's going to be fine. We'll all live. So I have won grants, apparently. And the first grant I applied to, I was an undergraduate, and I heard about the Skowhegan program. I did not know what it was, but I did apply. And then between my junior and senior year of college, I did the Skowhegan program. I didn't know it was a professional artist program. And so I ended up going, and I met like Leonardo Drew, and I won a full, it was expensive to go. It was like $5,000 or something like this. And I got a full scholarship. It was the first year of it. It's this David Driscoll Award, and it's like myself, Leonardo Drew, Gloria Halweirda, and this dude named Frank from LA. I don't remember his last name. So it was weird that I was like, wow, that's cool. And then I learned about New York, and I wanted to go to New York, and then I applied to the Whitney program. I also I'd never heard of it. And I was in college, and I applied to the Whitney Museum's independent study program. They give you a studio for a year. You do a show with the Whitney Museum. I'm going to slow down now because I realize that I'm presenting. And so I realized I had a bit of luck at the start, and also maybe a little bit of talent at making proposals as even a student, because I'd never made any proposals before. One thing in all of that is that I kept on making. I had a good experience, so I kept on making proposals, and that's become a part of my practice. But along the way, I've also had chances to adjust and reassess my practice. When I got the Artists in the Marketplace program, Hidemi Sato, who I have to thank for being able to present amongst the images of all these beautiful brown people, Artists in the Marketplace program and Laura Nova, we did this program together. And that gave me an opportunity to adjust. Like they were saying, well, they were trying to professionalize with Jackie Battenfield. And so that was an adjustment, and that was 2003. And then in 2008, with Creative Capital, that also made me reflect upon my process again. So I started out with some skills, then I updated those skills, and then I updated those skills. And we just live in that world now where you're constantly, even as an artist, you must constantly know new things and look at yourself and your process. So my basic work habit has always been this 33, 33, 33 thing. I do not know why. I was 17 when I came up with it, but it really just has been a thing. So I spend about 33% of my time making, 33% marketing, and 33% on admin. And those two really support the first thing. And if I get more time because I've done the first two efficiently, then I just put the percentage back in the first. Getting organized. Okie doke, we're going in. We're going to see things from my computer that no one has seen. Nothing embarrassing. So being an artist is such a profoundly murky business. No two artists can actually succeed the same way. Even if you know something that succeeded for one person, it just won't work out for you. It just never does. So how we prepare and organize over time, that process either does or doesn't provide us more opportunity. So I spent some time thinking about what I've been doing to give you this presentation tonight. It's new. These are some of the things that are principal to me in preparing, and I suggest to everyone. So keep all the application materials for anything you ever apply to. Organize them in folders by calendar year or academic year. Find a way to highlight your success, and there will be images of this later to show you exactly the way I do it. Work from successful writing and materials to make new applications. That, I think, is the most important thing that I do. I don't go back to stuff that I lost. I go to stuff that I won and work from that. Every couple of years, be cold. Look yourself in the mirror, give yourself a kick in the pants, and say, what the hell am I doing? What am I doing? Do not be kind. Do not be your own best friend. Be cold. And sometimes, for 3 or 4 years, you've been drifting away from a pattern of working, but you're still applying for the same things. And that's really important. It will save you time, and it also will show you who you are as an artist. Whew, we're here. We're here. I did not think this would ever happen. But this is happening, y'all. You are seeing my folders, my personal, private folders. So what's the first thing you notice here? There's colors, right? Every time I look at this is just last year. When I look at this, the colors light up my brain, and I only see the stuff I won. So even writing here, I was like, this is 20 years of organizing. Do not be scared. I'm a nerd. It's not that hard to become a nerd. If you want to be a nerd, if you're already a nerd, you're there. But it's not hard. I did 17 applications last year. I won 4. The yellows are shortlisted. So if you add in the shortlist where you make a hard, good impression with someone, my return rate is actually much higher. On average, for 20 years, my return rate is 20%. I get 2 out of 10 every year of any year that I apply. I'm knocking a lot of wood now because I've said it. And I said it in public, and I can't take it back. But that's what's happened. I can't take back what happened. Now, to put it in context, most people, I don't know, because artists do not talk to each other about this. I've never actually had a conversation with any other artists about this. So I know that my 20%, I can't predict which 20% I'll win, but I can predict what's in the hopper. And I think they're good for me because every 2 years I'm going back and I'm saying, is this good for me? Am I still doing this? Does this apply? I got so distant from myself at one point, I hired someone. I said, look at what I do. Am I applying for the right stuff? Make me a list of stuff that you think I should apply for. And I made a whole database. Well, it was a spreadsheet, okay? It wasn't that hard. It was just a list. It was a list, let's be honest. It was a list that someone else made that said, look, you were doing drawing, and now, you're doing more installation work. And there are a couple things you could add to that will add to what you do. So even as we're preparing, we're still in the process of making our work. We're not just making our work when we're hammering something, drilling, working on a computer. We're making our work as we're thinking about how we tell people about it. This is all flow. The green thing, so, I got a community commission, so I'm making a piece in Harlem. I got a NYFA grant. It's the second time I got a NYFA grant. And about a year or so ago, I started saying I wanted to be considered for permanent public sculptures. I've been doing public art now since 2013, 2014. And I was like, it might be time for me to consider doing that. So I actually did a thing, and then the green blue one at the top, the artist registry for the Percent for Art, I got nominated and was a finalist for a permanent public artwork one. And I had like a year ago, I said it, I applied, and then all of a sudden it became a kind of real thing. Sometimes just the manifesting of it brings it to, now at 3:59 today, just before doing this, I found out that I did not get this thing, this permanent public artwork. But you know what? I don't even think tomorrow that I will spend that much time thinking about it because I did everything I could to get it. And I'll show you some of that. And the other thing is that sometimes, even though I lost, before I even left the room, it was like 5 artists who were the finalists, start out with 100, then it was 50, then it was 35, then there's 5 that get into the room. Before I left the room, I had 2 other show opportunities and a 3rd permanent public art installation that someone offered me because they could see that, like, I mean, kind of takes this seriously. And I do. So, 20 years, I get about 20%. Now, I would challenge you all to go back and look at what you do and actually, even if for only the last 3 years, organize it and see what your return is. Now, if you get like 1 in 20, maybe you consider that you need to upgrade your skills in how you do your proposals, or maybe you say, well, I don't need to do that. I'm not going to fund my work that way. I'm going to do another way because this isn't going to, because like 1 in 20, it's not that big a return. But if it's 1 in 40, it's not that big a return. So you have to think about, like, what is my time worth? And so for me, it's very worthwhile when I'm, and the other thing I'll say is that when a lot of the art world is people asking you to do stuff, but what if people aren't asking you to do stuff? This is how you organize your time and make your career up yourself. Take control and initiate your practice, whether or not people think you're the best thing. And people think you're the best thing for like 5 years, and then the next 5 years, they're like, well, there are other best things. But I'm still here. Right? So there are years where people are asking me to do a lot of work, and so then I have to cut back on the things that I apply for. And then in those years, I'm assessing what I'm going to do next. After their moves, I still have my moves. So even as a strategic person, I want you to think about the fact that this is all part of the flow of how we're going to succeed in an art world that exists for hot new things. And your career is longer than most galleries. 100% of the time. The average gallery is 5 years to be able to be successful, and they mostly don't make it. Your career, a lot more stable. So it's really only up to you. There's no gallerist out there that's going to do that for you. So anyway, things to keep. I know this is super boring and super granular, but you can see every time I look in here, I see what I've won. That's all I see. I see that I win and what I've won, and I go back and I think, oh, if I'm going to do another NYFA grant, I'm going to go back to one NYFA grant where I was really clear and add 2 pictures, not redo the whole thing. And you can see that I've got my images, and even if at acceptance they ask you to give them 3 images, I keep the images that they gave me as a 3 in a separate place so I can know what my mindset was when I said, this is how I want to represent this project. And then I usually, and in this case I didn't, I don't know why, but I think recently I went through a purge of data. So I usually keep a category called no. So it's just a Z, so it goes down to the bottom, because I'm not going to think about it, this is no. So Z_no, so I usually have a no. And that's all the images I didn't put in, all the things I didn't think were good, and I go through and I just kind of go, I think a couple weeks ago, some of the Zenos, I just threw them out because I'm not going back. I was like, I won, no. So, and the Zeno is really interesting because then you're seeing how you think about you and also what images are at the cusp of being interesting. So as we're editing, I mean, we're constantly thinking about our work. We're organizing. You would never say, man, the 5 worst paintings in my studio are the paintings I'm going to spend the most time on in the next year. No, you're going to think the most difficult paintings. There are a lot of different ways that 5 paintings could be interesting to you out of 30. And those are the ones where you're taking the crystalline and moving on. And that's how I want people to think about what they do. It's what I do, and I'm not saying it'll work for you in any way, and I make no guarantees or claims on my past or future success, but I think it's possible that if you consider this, It will give you a new way of thinking about how you do what you do. Most important, always, always, always do any writing, and now everything is apps online. Never, ever, ever do an app in the module. Never, ever, ever do it. Even if it's really fast and you think, don't do it. Because you won't save it, and what'll happen is the app will give you a PDF later of what you put in, but you didn't actually control that. It's disjointed, and when you do this and you keep it yourself, you can't read this. This is very good, you can't read this, because it's probably drivel. But the point is, when you do this, you see the whole flow of your ideas, and whether or not all of your ideas actually hold together before you give them to someone else, not after. After you can say, damn, that didn't make any sense. But what can you do about it? You're screwed. Always, always write first, no matter what, then give it to someone else. And also you can email this to, your cousin. So, maybe you don't have cousins, I don't know. Organizing a bit helps us grow. And I mean a bit, not a lot, because this doesn't actually take me any time. You know you're gonna make all these files, you know you're gonna do all this stuff. You could just leave it on your desktop or make one big folder that you dump it all into. But if you organize it going in, there's something, I think it feels architectural in my mind. Of course, memory is this interesting thing, and as you start to assemble associative chains, the way that things link together in your head, it makes more out of it, and it makes association. But you're trying as an artist to see how you see all the time. So this makes it simpler. So marking the successes allows us to work from strong work. You wouldn't go to your weakest sculpture and go, that's what everybody wants from me. You would never do that. If you're writing about your strongest work, your strongest writing about your work is what you should spend your time on. Go from strength to strength. Every time I look into a folder, I see what's strong, and I remind myself, even if I'm not thinking about it, what is the best of what I've done? Or what is the simplest or most communicable, or what is most connecting with other people? Identify language that clearly connects what you're doing, super important. And also, fixing good writing is way easier than fixing bad writing or making new writing. So allow yourself more applications to be completed. So I can do an application in an hour. On any given day, I can just turn one around. Now, whether it'll be good or not, I don't know, but at least it started out from something that was good. And for things where I know year to year, they're very tough, they're very competitive, I could still give them something from last year, update it, and show the story that I'm working. So people remember what they see if it strikes them, and then you add this new work. Cuts down on repetition, cuts down on editing images, concepts, text. Simpler applications are an hour or two, you can do them. And that's me, but I'm trying to professionalize how that can be done. And I already talked about applications don't change much from year to year. So sometimes, and this is really important, if the work is great, the Whitney program, I got straight out of school. Now, maybe if I didn't get that, I would think the Whitney program is not for me. But when I applied to the Creative Capital, I was more experienced. This is almost 20 years into my career, and I'm like, man, that application was fire. It was. I don't care. It was good. And it had a title called Double Take. Now, Laura, she's always telling people that I helped her get her first grant. It's not true. She's freaking fire. She knows what she's doing. But I did one thing for myself that I told her to do. I took the same proposal, put it back at Creative Capital, and gave it a new title. And by giving it this new title, I focused all the stuff that was good about it and put it into this title. And it was a new doorway to the same material that was fire. But Double Take was been the title of movie. It's really ubiquitous, Double Take. And it was a story about a slave who was a spy during the American Revolution. And when I started to call the program the Project Spook, it was clear. I was talking about a Negro. I was talking about a spy. I was talking about somebody who was invisible, like a ghost or apparition. Spook. Double Take, not bad. And the content was the same. I cleaned up some of the grammar because you can always do better at grammar. One could always do better at grammar. So the other thing, check in on recipients of grants that you are seeking and read how they describe the work. Most places they do have alumni. You can see, read them. Because you're basically getting house style, what they think good writing is. Now, maybe it's not very good, but you should at least know what it is when you walk into the door. If you were going for a job interview and you knew that most of the people who got hired there always wore blue suits, you should know that and wear a freaking blue suit. Track and plan recommendations in advance. Now, this is very important. You're not just applying to other people. If you contact every person that you know and ask them for a recommendation the day before it's due, you're telling everyone that you know, and who thinks what you do is important, that you don't take the time to prepare. And you can't take it back. That's self-explanatory, right? Yeah. And if I'm being too pedantic or too granular on this, it's the first time doing it, but I want to be clear about the way I think about the process of how I put these things together. And then if you're requesting from past recipients, known associates, as you're requesting for recommenders, ask them for tips. Ask them for things that they know that maybe other people don't know. It's out there. Sometimes they just say, oh yeah, they're totally into this. And that will help you think about how it is what you do applies to what you're doing. It doesn't mean you have to change what you're doing, but at least you know, or you have some idea. Enthusiasm counts, and this is something I would say, I don't do that often, but there was something I was applying for, and a friend of mine wasn't even a curator anymore. She started writing as a PR for a global PR firm. But she was so crazy about the work and wrote, and you know, I got that grant. And so one of my recommenders wasn't an art world person. So what? If the writing about you shows how much that person values you, it doesn't have to be the director of a museum. It can be the director of a PR firm. They have public standing. And in some cases, they go, wow, this is somebody we should think about for the board. Anyways, I'm always thinking about these little side things. But anyways, on content, and this is really important. This is how if you knew my grandma, you would know instantly that she was smarter than you. She was tougher than you. And the one thing she would not put up with is you patronizing her. She didn't use any special fancy language. And I wouldn't say anything to you that I wouldn't say to my grandma. That's the picture in my head when I'm applying for anything. My grandma, who loved me. Every time I'm applying for a grant, I'm talking to someone who loves me. Me as I am, saying what I want, and being the freak that I am. My grandma was like, fly your freak flag. You want to go get a job as an artist? I'm gonna get you your first blazer. We're gonna go to a designer so you get your first blazer to express yourself. She didn't know why I was trying to express myself, but she just wanted me to. And then she would ask me, why do you do that, whatever, and grandparents just listen in a different way than parents listen. A lot of people, they have conflicted relationship with their parents. Please don't picture your parents. That's all I ask. It just has to be someone who you have a clear dialogue with. Don't say too much. That's a hard one. If you could write about it, you wouldn't have to make it. Ego is not your amigo. No one knows what you know. No one has the same background. No one thinks like you do. You're an artist. No one does that. No one can assume what you mean. Never assume about an audience. So this is an ongoing story about how you work. Over time, your work is exposing you to new audiences, curators, collectors, and it may take years for people to get what you do. Now, in some cases, like Howardina Pindell, who had her first Savory show at the Alternative Museum in the 90s, people just never got what she did. And I don't know, Carmen Herrera, she 85 years old, and Ruth Asawa, one of the best of the Bauhaus, but apparently no one paid attention until just recently. But in all of those cases, they had practices I don't know if how I consider preparing for proposing will help them, but in the way that we work now, it may help you to be a little bit more visible and to control a little bit more about what happens in your career, what residencies you do. On public space, this is an abbreviated resource list, and I'm not going to go into it because I'm running short on time, and I want to show you an actual proposal. But this is a short list. If you want to get started in public work, this list will be on the KODA website, kodalab.org. So you can start here. The percent for art. Many people, there are all these buildings going up, and there's 1% of this building going up. If you want to know how to be eligible for a permanent artwork, here's a list of what's happening just this month, and there's another list for next month. Go to the one that was a couple days ago was an informational colloquium. Anybody's welcome to go. Go. Chat with them. They'll just chat with you. Don't go into sales pitch mode. Just talk to them about the process that they go through so you can understand. So, approaching public work, and I will be brief here. First off, if you're thinking about making public art, do you like talking to random people? Really? Really? Do you like talking? Because if you don't, do not do this. I don't care how good an artist you are, if you do not like talking to random people, just worthless. Do your materials actually suit exposure to weather? Because then you're going to have to change all the materials you use to make public work. Do they suit handling? Now in a gallery, somebody might touch and be okay, but outside they're definitely going to touch. They're definitely touchers outside. A lot of touching. And the last thing, maybe not most important, but are you into having input that's not aesthetic from multiple sources and then having to aestheticize that? So people talking to you about things about the work that are not about how it looks or how it hits emotionally, that you then have to incorporate, that has to, because all of that becomes your content. Anything anybody puts in becomes your content, and you're in charge of how that hits with someone emotionally. So this is an actual proposal for Socrates Sculpture Park that was accepted. This is a 2/5 scale version of an Astoria Houses public housing tower that was just outside of the park. I'm not good at Photoshop or digital stuff at all, and you can tell. I make sculpture. When I was in the park, I look at this, and if you look through the sculpture, you'll see this brand new tower that now overlooks the park. When I hit the center of the park, it was the first big skyscraper tower in Astoria, and it just sent me into a rage. And I had noticed the public housing and that's the biggest community in the community. And then I went to their website, and we're going to have to put this online. But essentially, I said I wanted to put Astoria Houses at the center of the cultural space. And what I did was go to the website of the tower that annoyed me. When I felt that thing on the site, and this is about site-specific work, if you're in the public art game and you can't go to a site and just get a strong feeling off of it, I really don't see the point. It's not about alien dropping whatever you do in your studio to a place. And so here, this is the part that got me to make this sculpture. I went to East River Tower's website, and it says, located just steps from Socrates, Noguchi Museum, this soaring 20-story contemporary quote-unquote sculpture offers breathtaking views of Manhattan from every unit. Not only did it not mention Astoria, they went straight to Manhattan. I was like, come on. That raised me. I was like, this. So then I went to Astoria. Every public housing has websites. I went to their thing, and so their websites, like there are 22 buildings, some 6, some 7 stories high. And then I'm going to go to the next page because this is the part that really broke me and that made me put the housing that was erased from the other, because Noguchi refers to Socrates, Socrates refers to Noguchi, PS1 refers, and all the websites of all the businesses, they all refer to each other. They're all there saying how great Astoria is. And not one of them mentioned Astoria Houses. And I'm like, that's the core of gentrification, that this erasure is happening And what could I actually do about it, even for, so I went to this line and I it's like, note, you first of all have to apply for public housing on their online portal. If you're interested in a victim of domestic violence priority, you must file a public housing application online first. If you have not already filed within the past 2 years, then you may apply for the VDV upgrade through the NYCHA self-portal. And at this point, I was like broke because I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I mean, this is our housing. This is public housing. And the end of the East River Tower was about, you know, and these are $300,000 units and they have beautiful views. And to get into the public housing, if you want benefit for being a victim of domestic violence, it just broke me. And then I also realized that I had lived in public housing for 18 months when my parents got divorced, and that my mother was someone who probably had to do this, not in New York, but in DC. I only realized this as I went back to this proposal, because in 2015, I don't think when I was making the proposal that I could emotionally accept that this had happened to me, that I was a part of this story. So as I was preparing this, I realized that, and then I was broke again, and I was like, but I said I wanted the drawings that I put before, these are just sketches in my sketchbook and they look sketchy. And I said I wanted to make it out of hand-sewn steel lath. This is a hand-sewn steel lath work in my studio. So I can sew lath. I said I want to sew lath, I can sew lath. And then this is my last work. This is the first public artwork I had done before Socrates. So then I show I have done a public work. And it is metal. And the other thing, I want to sew this lath and I want to put it on a metal frame. I have made a metal frame. This one is 50 feet by 50 feet by 25 feet. Yours will be 20 by 40. I can do that. This is all a clear picture. And whatever I felt that moment when I looked out and I saw that tower, when they read my proposal, they felt it too. Everybody that worked in that park, everybody who went to the park to be on the committee, when they went to the center park, they saw that tower and they're like, man, that's going to be a bad sign. Everybody felt it. And I knew I would get this. This is what was actually approved from my first sketchy sketches. This is the sketch that was in my sketchbook and I gave to them. I'm sorry. And this is the final work. It's a 2/5 scale version. You can see the towers that it replicates in the background. And this is from inside the work. I have actually counseled some spaces to put some small cost on their application because then they will have more money to give to artists to make work. I have actually said that as a consultant. If an artist does not have 20 bucks, it is just not that likely that they're going to be able to complete a major commission. And I believe that if you have 1,000 people and they spend 20 bucks, and I'm not saying that, for the Rome Prize, they have a lot of people who apply for the Rome Prize. It's like 40 bucks to apply. I just don't think that's too much. And I actually think for what they do, because they take all of that money and house and feed you with amazing pasta, and I haven't done that one, but I have imagined, and I have been to Rome. Rome's my favorite city, so like I can walk Rome blindfolded. But to me, you have to be very picky about things that you're applying for, whether they're worth your time. But in certain cases, if it's like $20, I just think it's worth it for you to give $20 to an institution. And if you don't have $20, I don't really believe in God, but God bless you. That's how I feel about that. Now, that's just me. Half of the people in this room who are more accomplished artists will say something else. But that's how I feel about that. A lot of places ask you for anonymous letters of recommendation, so you don't actually get the letters of recommendation. But if you are in the situation where someone asks you, and a lot of people now will say, look, I need you to make me a draft of what you think for the recommendation. You better keep that. Why? Because you're giving them writing, and you want to know that if you're giving writing to another person, that all of a sudden they get two letters that are the same, you look weird. You just look like a weirdo. Like they're like, how do two people that know him use this same language from his website? And it's a respectful thing that some people would say, this is my private opinion. They may not like your vote, but if they do, keep it. And there are people, if you've used recommenders and you're really not getting anything and you feel like the work is good and all the things, change recommenders. Change. And if you feel like people aren't really, like if you ask someone and they're not really enthusiastic, pick someone else. Instantly pick someone else. The person who will write you a recommendation is great, will say, oh yeah, totally. Write me a draft, it's totally gonna happen for you. If they go, well, you know, I'm so busy. Everybody's busy. If you want something done, ask a busy person. They're getting lots of things done. So, and I mean, this is all really, you know, and I don't, you know, but it's stuff, and I think, I wish artists would talk more about how we can support each other to do these things, because that's really our strength. And regarding, you know, for me in general, this is marketing time. So there are people that might be curating a show at MoMA. I don't know them. I can't introduce myself to them at a party. And while we're here, these are preliminary for a project that I did complete. And this is an approved one. And then this is what I gave to before going for the council at Community Board 5. And then this is the actual completed work. So it's all about sort of building enough of a language with people that you're making more and more clear statements about yourself and that people give you the benefit of the doubt. Because 9 out of 10 things that people are sending out as artists, and I'm on so many, and even, I mean, I was on a panel selecting for museums and alternative spaces, and a lot of it is just word salad. They think they put some buzzwords together, and it's just like, whoa. So if you come off and say, I would like to make a work that takes the 4,000 residents of Astoria houses and puts them in the center of the cultural space, everybody kind of wants to be there with you. If you say, I want to make a piece, Washington 2020, that celebrates the 20,000 slaves who worked with Washington, and you know, the 20% of Washington's army that was African at the end of the American Revolution, that laments the 20,000 slaves in New York when Washington was here fighting for freedom, and talks about the fact that there was 20% of the American colonial population that was enslaved, people kind of go, yeah, I would like to see that. It's just clear. So a lot of my pieces, I spend more time on the title, a lot of times, and the title kind of has to get you there. And this, you can see that the sign has 2 stories. One is about before the war, and they both end with 20% of the population is enslaved, both before and after the revolution. Yes, Laura. That was at, oh, I'm sorry. That was at Olana State Historic Site, which is the home of Frederick Church. And Frederick Church is a Hudson River School painter. Within 40 years of the Hudson River School painters, we have what is known as Manifest Destiny. That was one of those weird things where somebody just asked me to do something. They're just like, and I was just like, and I said, yes, I had been making things that were the size of this, 100 drawings to make a graphic novel about the American Revolution. I worked for 10 years on the African presence in the American Revolution. And then somebody said, well, this is really outside of your, but I feel like you did make some sculpture before. I'm like, yeah. And they asked me, and I said, yes, how long of a lead time will I have? They told me I had about a year, and I said, yes, I'll do it. Now, it took me 9 months to come up with a concept. And so that gave me sort of an idea about how long it takes me to come up with an idea. Now, that's been consistent. Nothing has changed. It still takes me about 9 months to come up with a good idea. And I only do one a year. And that completely makes me outside of the art world. But you know, I make work. I don't think Kubrick made 10 films. I don't think he was unhappy about that. You know, Maya Deren didn't make a bunch of films. She made works that were just incredible. And so this is the way I work. And it took that process, and I was like, wow. And when I was at Socrates, when I made some of the feathers so that they could fall out, so that it would kind of molt and change over time. And I could never find any feathers in the park, ever. And I was like, are they taking them home? And then I looked a little closer, and I look, and people have been putting the feathers back. I couldn't find a feather for 2 blocks. And these are feathers, they fly. I looked, I couldn't find any. I walked the whole acreage. They were putting the feathers back, and they weren't putting them back like I put them. They were making different patterns. They were showing me they were creative, but they had adopted it. And that's when I was hooked. That's when I knew I had to make public art. And I never considered anything else after that. I was like, I do this. I make this. So, you know, the process and all that support that, because I had that feeling. And I think you just get better and better at knowing how if you're organizing, it gets you closer and closer to that feeling. It seems like stupid nerd work, but do it. You'll spend less time wondering whether or not, you know, what was right for you to have done and what was wrong for you to have done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was incredible. That was so much information in 3 minutes.
This is way too much, I'm sorry.
No, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your file organization system.
Oh my God.